Hello, and welcome to Conscious Curiosities, where we unlock the wisdom of the universe which lies within us. I'm your host, Maria Luz, an astrologer, psychic medium, and certified hypnotist. And today's episode is entitled, So Pluto Moves into Aquarius Next Week. In this episode, a brief recap on Pluto in order to understand the archetypal energy we're shifting to, the Aquarius mythology, Aquarius astrological associations, and the look and feel of Aquarius. If you follow astrology, you know that Pluto will depart the sign of Capricorn, where it has been since January of 2008. It leaves Capricorn on November 19th and enters the sign of Aquarius, where it will be until March of 2043. So you could probably do the math, but this time in Capricorn is the last that you will have ever seen Pluto in your lifetime because it is a 248-year cycle or orbit around the sun. Similarly, this is the last time you're going to see Pluto in Aquarius. In order to understand what this means for us personally and as a collective, I'm going to first do a refresher on Pluto, and I'll also put a link to an episode I did a while back, I think in July. And then I'm just going to go dive into the energy of Aquarius so we know what we're all getting into for the next 19 years. Okay, so for our purposes today, just a brief recap of Pluto. Pluto placements by sign are generational because everyone born within the approximately 12 to 30 years that Pluto spends in a sign share their Pluto sign. Of course, the house placement will differ because your rising sign will differ. And note that varying time, that 12 to 30 years spent in each sign, is because Pluto has an eccentric orbit around the sun. In mythology, Pluto, also known as Hades, was god of the underworld, and he was also part of a drama with Persephone. And through some shady actions on Pluto's part, Persephone became goddess of the underworld. And Persephone's mother, Demeter, also known as Ceres, was goddess of the harvest. And she was so distraught over losing her daughter to the underworld that she appealed to her brother Zeus, also known as Jupiter, to divide up Persephone's time between the underworld and the earth. And this resulted in the seasons where we have dormancy in the fall and winter and then growth throughout the spring and summer. And Pluto's energy correlates with intensity, extremes, power, transformation, betrayal, things being hidden, attachment, detachment, death, birth, deconstruction, and expulsion. And I'm sure I'm forgetting many other keywords. And in the Jeffrey Wolf Green lineage of evolutionary astrology that I practice, Pluto represents the soul's desires. And as such, will lead to the evolution of our soul if we work with the energy or maybe cease to resist it. And of course, it's more complicated than that, but such is Pluto. So we would then synthesize all of those Pluto things with the archetype of Aquarius in order to understand the energy we are moving into. And for you to personally apply this energy, you would look at the area where Aquarius resides in your birth chart, paying attention also to the cross it makes with the areas that are covered by the other fixed signs of Leo, Taurus, and Scorpio, because those would be making the square and the opposition aspects to Aquarius. And as a very broad guideline, these are the areas of your chart. Again, the houses represent areas of your life where you will feel Pluto doing those Pluto things I described in an Aquarian manner. And just ask anyone with significant placements in Capricorn, but not only Capricorn, in the cross that it makes with Cancer, Libra, and Aries, where they've been experiencing Pluto doing his Capricorn thing since 2008. Of course, we can also think about what we've experienced as a collective in this time. And as always, when you're looking at the personal meaning, I have to state that, the birth chart as a whole matters. And as you learn more astrology, you'll pick up the nuances of your chart and how and when you may feel Pluto in Aquarius more personally as it moves through that sign. And in some ways, as much as Pluto is about extremes, so is Aquarius. Its glyph looks like water, yet it is an air sign. And the glyph is actually that of a young man pouring water from a jug. It's associated with rebellion, yet it's also associated with groups. So, how do we then get our heads around the extremes within this single energy? I'll provide a breakdown on the essentials, but first, some quotes are from Stephen Forrest's Book of Air, The Art of Paying Attention. And he distills Aquarius into, quote, the process of figuring out who we really are as distinct from what we have been trained to believe we are. He also draws from astrologer Dane Rudhyar and writes, quote, Rudhyar goes directly to the heart of the Aquarian paradox, which is the essential symbiosis between a culture and those who would overthrow it. End quote. Whoa. He further states that, quote, Aquarian individuation can occur in the context of social expectations, constraints, rules, and threats of coercion. Can only occur. Sorry, I think I said that wrong. But I find this described even in the ancient mythology. And this is where the glyph comes from. So in the myth, there was a young prince named Ganymede who was captured by Zeus, who was disguised as an eagle. Zeus, in case you don't know, he did a lot of unsavory things, and this is one of them. So he made Ganymede into a servant and a lover and a sort of bartender to the gods. And so one day, Ganymede rebels and he pours out all of the special drinks, the water, the ambrosia, all the wines, and all the water fell to earth, which caused these massive floods. And then Zeus felt bad about how he treated Ganymede, and in repentance, he immortalized him as the constellation Aquarius. And then the astrological associations Aquarius, as I mentioned, is a fixed sign. It's also an air sign. And it's that time of winter when winter is its most wintriest, most concentrated in between the seasons of Capricorn and Pisces. It's ruled by Saturn in Hellenistic astrology, and its modern ruler is Uranus. It's associated with the 11th house, which is about the groups you associate or aspire to associate with, areas of innovation and your future. It's also associated with social ideals, humanitarianism, world citizenship, and impersonal love. And then the look and feel of Aquarius. Before I knew astrology well, Aquarius frustrated the hell out of me. Or perhaps more accurately, my brother, who is, I think, a quintessential Aquarius, frustrated the hell out of me. And don't worry, he will never read this because astrology was not his idea. In part, it frustrated me because it also sits opposite the zodiac wheel from my Leo sun. And unless we have placements in this place opposite our sun, we might find the energy of that area hard for us to feel into. I was also hyper invested in conforming, which is really antithetical to Aquarius. And there is a kernel of truth about Aquarius in my statement that my brother is partial to his own ideas to the point of scoffing at those which do not originate from his mind, unless and until he makes them his own somehow. Aquarians take great pleasure in finding things that others have not. And in order to do this, they must be acutely aware of what the mainstream is comprised of. Then they reinvent all kinds of things from technology to music styles to fashions to ways of measuring or reporting things. They also enjoy having groups of people around them who appreciate the novelties they have found in the mundane, everyday ways and objects that are right under our noses. They enjoy the concept, which brings people together over the actual people themselves. And one way to think about this is to consider some Aquarius sun sign people. And first, I have Thomas Edison. He invented the light bulb and the phonograph. He obviously had to deeply understand the limits of physics and materials to make those inventions. And then I pulled out two examples from flight. Charles Lindbergh innovated by flying the first transatlantic flight, and Chuck Yeager was the first pilot to exceed the speed of sound in an aircraft. And in order to break through these aviation ceilings, they had to understand the laws of physics and the mechanics of an airplane very well. And call it eclectic, eccentric, or oddball, Aquarian energy brings it all. However, without others to appreciate it, or worse, if others persecute them for it, things get crunchy. Remember, this is an air sign, therefore, it will think its way out of discomfort. It's also a fixed sign, so it can get stuck once it has attached to its own idea. And this is where others with Aquarian energy can help. The collective, when it's diverse, can keep feeding data into the system and trying these new things. It doesn't have to be an either or situation when this energy is flowing properly. However, when the discomfort of separation from the main group becomes too severe, or maybe the consequences of not conforming become too harmful, then Aquarius may consciously flip into the status quo mode and just go along to get along with the group. Alternatively, if it's a very self sufficient Aquarian energy, it's not going to be bothered if it doesn't fit in. And in fact, it may even revel in it, finding like a certain cachet in being the eccentric uncle type figure. And ironically, they can get stuck in a state of inconsistency or unpredictability. So those two words, they seem fluid, but Aquarius can get stuck in those fluid states, which is frustrating if you're around it. I imagine if you're in it as well. And if you are interested in history, and I posit that all astrologers become historians at some point, the Astrology podcast has an excellent episode on Pluto in Aquarius throughout history. And it's about 4 hours long. So bring your endurance. And I just always say hats off to Chris Brannon, who's the host, and in this case, his guest, Nick Dagan Best, for all of the work that must have gone into that episode. And I hope this empowers you to be consciously curious about Pluto in Aquarius. If you find this podcast helpful, please share it, like it, and leave a review. You can also follow me over on Substack, where I put the companion written astrology. I also have tools for free there, and I would love to see you as a client. You can also find links in the show notes to my website and also link there from my Substack, where again, I hope to have you join me because it's just a cool place to hang out. I appreciate you so much and I wish you a wonderful day. Bye bye.